Hello, I'm Alex Gill with Anime on Location here at ASEN 2011, and we're here with Josh Elder of Reading with Pictures. How are you enjoying ASEN so far this year?
It's great as always. I actually just got in this morning, but they rolled me in, got me breakfast, got me set up. It's such an awesome show. It's really one of my favorites to do. So always happy to be here.
Awesome. Can you tell us a little bit more about Mail Order Ninja?
Sure. So Mail Order Ninja is sort of the book that broke me out. It won the Rising Stars of Manga contest, Tokyo Pop's Rising Stars of Manga contest back in 2005. It's a story of a boy who orders his own ninja from a mail order catalog and takes him to school. Sort of Calvin and Hobbes if Hobbes was a ninja. And we turned that into a book series. It got picked up as a nationally syndicated comic strip, ran in the LA Times, the Boston Globe, over 50 other newspapers. And, you know, it's been looked at as a stage play at the Chicago Children's Theater. We've gone around in Hollywood quite a bit with it too, but mostly, you know, at its core, it's a comic. It's the thing that, of all the stuff that I've created creatively, it's the thing I'm most proud of. And yeah, it's just a fun book for kids of all ages. Awesome. Kids at heart, I guess.
All right. Now that StarCraft 2 has been released, and you know, Heart of the Swarm and Legacy of the Void are on their way sometime, are there any other StarCraft projects that you are associated with besides Frontline?
So, Tokyo Pop. So Frontline was done through Tokyo Pop, and I did a lot of work on that. I was the first writer hired, actually. Developed a lot of how the Protoss speech was going to work. I got to do a lot of fun, nerdy, awesome things. And now Blizzard's kind of reevaluating their whole comic line, because Blizzard takes very, very seriously their internal continuity and their universe, and every word that is written about the StarCraft universe, the Warcraft universe, has to be vetted and approved by about 50 different people. And it just got to the point where they were like wondering, is this a good investment for us to do comics? We have so much time just to make sure it's all right. So I think Blizzard internally is reevaluating that. So the big answer is maybe. And if so, I don't know exactly where it would be. If more stuff happens, I absolutely want to do more of it, because it was such an awesome thing to do. It was so much fun, and such a different type of storytelling than I typically do. I'm a comedy writer, mostly writing for kids, and here I got to do some really dark military science fiction, and touch on some big themes, and it was just awesome. So much fun.
Well, I, for one, really love the Frontline stuff, so thank you very much. Now, the artists that you're associated with, the style changes from that of American comics to the aesthetic that you see in Japanese manga. For these artists, what similarities and differences do you notice between them?
So I've worked with a lot of artists over the years on licensed properties like StarCraft, The Batman Strikes, on original works like Mail Order Ninja or Pandora, Love Bites. So I've worked with a lot of different artists and a lot of different styles for a lot of different purposes. And I think the key is identifying what is the point of this. What kind of aesthetic do we want? And what are we trying to evoke? With Mail Order Ninja, we're deliberately trying to grab the kind of that great dichotomy that I think manga does better than anything, which is juxtaposing really kind of absurdist humor with dramatic action. And manga and anime, and the styles that manga and anime have developed, I think, do that better than anything, where you can have a cute, a sort of chibi'd type character, and contrast them with more realistically drawn characters, and more action aesthetics, and you can pull that off with a manga style better than any American style. And so that was perfect for Mail Order Ninja. With some of the other stuff that I've done, like The Batman Strikes, there we were working under what the Batman was supposed to look like, the cartoon, which also had a manga and anime aesthetic, but for a different purpose. So it really, I think, for me, I always look at it and say, what's the point of the look of this? And that determines where we go. That determines, well, where we try to push the art. So yeah, it really is on a case-by-case basis for me. Like, where are we going with this? What do we want to do? What do we want to show?
Okay. Are there benefits or difficulties associated with quickly transferring from one style to another?
I mean, there are. So Mail Order Ninjas, again, I think the best example of where we had two styles sort of smashing against each other. There was this really cutesy, almost Pokemon-looking aesthetic for most of the characters. The townspeople in Cherry Creek, Timmy, who gets the ninja, his nemesis Felicity, the bullies, his best friend. They're all very cute characters, cute designs. And then the ninja and his entire world that he brings with him are very much more hard-edged designs, more realistic proportions. Everything's overly muscled and much more detailed. So the artist Eric Owen that did the bulk of the work on Mail Order Ninja is really talented and is able to move between those within the same panel and have these characters interacting with each other in the same space, not even just from one page to the next or one scene to the next, within the same scene, within the same panel, and pull it off. And, I think it was a challenge for him, certainly, but it was an aesthetic that we cultivated and developed in the series, and it really paid off. I think it's what makes Mail Order Ninja work, honestly.
All right. The Batman Strikes is part of a superhero franchise that has a history of over 70 years, and it's definitely going to continue for another 70 years and beyond. What experience was it like to contribute to something that has that type of longevity?
Well, it's daunting and humbling, because it's so huge. But at the other end of the spectrum, like, honestly, when I started, it's like, wow, I'm writing Batman. And for me, and this was an even bigger deal, I got to write Superman in the course of that series. So it was daunting, but at the same time, I could look back and say, a lot of people have written Batman and Superman over the years. A lot. And there's been a lot of great stories and a lot of stories that, were only so-so, really. And it's like, I can do better than that. And it was a thing where now I was sort of challenging myself to live up to what the greats have done, but also say, you know what? There have been a lot of other stories, Batman stories out there that haven't, been a home run, and that's okay. So it was both daunting and then also kind of relaxing. Where it's like, it's okay, take a deep breath. It doesn't have to be the greatest story ever. And Batman did a lot of the work, honestly. Batman's a character that has all this stuff built around him, and as long as you're true to who Batman is, Batman will give you good material to work with. And starting from that point, I was able to do a lot of, I think, exciting and fun stuff with the character. And for me, the biggest challenge was to do something I'd never seen before. And so one story we had, every page was a minute of story time. There was a bomb ticking down that was going to blow up Gotham City. And that was a challenge for me from a story perspective, and it was something I'd never seen before. So to be able to contribute something like that was extraordinarily rewarding.
And with series like Batman, because they have this enormous lifespan, it can be a little intimidating for readers who are new to the material that want to get into it to be introduced to it. What do you think is the best suggestion that you have for people who want to get into a big-name superhero franchise but are unsure of where to begin?
Okay, good question. It depends. There's for pretty much every major hero now, there's a seminal work that you can point to that is that character. Yeah. Batman Year One, Superman Secret Origin or Superman Birthright, Daredevil, probably either Year One or Born Again, both by Frank Miller. So every character's really got like one book now that you can kind of latch onto. In general, I'd honestly say, depending on when you're starting them, whatever the ongoing children's version is at the time, whatever's tied to a cartoon. So Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes is going on at Marvel right now, or the Marvel Adventures line at DC, Batman Brave and the Bold, or Young Justice. And those are books that are designed to reach a larger audience because they're tied to the cartoons that are designed to reach a much larger audience than the comics typically do. And so what they do is they streamline the stories, they make them accessible. So I'd start there, honestly. So that's, and that depends on the age of who you're talking to, but that's where I'd start.
Kids Love Comics takes a unique approach in how it encourages children to read through comics and graphic novels. Can you tell us more about this organization and what the reception has been from parents and people who encourage literacy through comics?
Sure. So Kids Love Comics was actually kind of the predecessor to Reading with Pictures. And Reading with Pictures is the organization that I founded and run as the president and executive director. And it's basically our goal is to use comics to promote literacy in the arts. And we bring comics into the classroom because we believe in the value of visual literacy and how we think comics can be a multiplier for all types of learning. You bring a comic into the classroom no matter what the subject is. If it's well done and it's on target, on message, we think we can accelerate and enhance the learning process for any subject at any grade level. Really that came from me learning to read from comics at a young age, learning to love reading, learning to love learning because of comics, and how it, through my entire scholastic career, I was a National Merit Scholar, I was a college student as a middle schooler because I took the SAT in the 6th grade, scored high enough to get entrance into my local community college. Basically, Hooked on Comics worked for me, and I want to share that with everybody.
All right. Tell us about the work with Reading with Pictures that so many artists here in Chicago are working on in collaboration.
Sure. So Reading with Pictures is a lot of different things. We released an anthology in August of last year, and we're working on a deal to set up an educational imprint at an educational publisher. So lots of stuff actually in development right now that, kind of too early to talk about, but stuff is happening to turn this into an actual ongoing effort. And a lot of people in and around Chicago where we're based have been involved in Reading with Pictures on the creative level, contributing to the anthology, and will be contributors to this larger effort that we're working on. And the anthology was kind of our proof of concept. We say that you can teach with comics. Okay, here's a bunch of comics you can teach with. You're a middle school social studies teacher. Here's a short story that teaches a thing that you would want to teach in class anyway, that's a textbook, that's stuff that would be on your, standardized test. You can teach it with this. And you can teach phonics at the 3rd grade with this. Things like that. And the anthology was our attempt to kind of cast a wide net and prove to teachers of all stripes, of all subject matters at all grade levels, that you can teach with this stuff, and give them something concrete they can teach with. Now we're trying to take that concept and focus it like a laser on very particular grade levels and subject matters, so there'd be a whole book of middle school civics, of high school biology, stuff that is written to state and national standards, stuff that can be dropped into a classroom and at no risk to the teacher. That a lot of introducing stuff into classrooms is hard because they have so many rules as to what they can use, and they have so many guided directives as to what they have to teach. So we're going to make it as easy and as risk-free for teachers to start using comics in the classroom as we possibly can. And coming with that material will be tools to teach teachers how to teach with comics, because they don't know how yet. This is a brave new world for them, and we're going to show them and hold their hands really through that process.
All right. As the founder, what are some of the thoughts and ideas you brought with Reading with Pictures from the ground up?
Okay, so it was born out of me visiting schools and libraries all across the country, promoting Mail Order Ninja actually, but that grew into, I kept getting asked, we'd love to do more with this, we don't know how, we don't have the research base to prove that we should be using this to our administrators, to our parents, and we don't know what the good material is. Or we've looked and we don't think there is any really good material out there for this subject. And so those are three big questions, big problems. And so Reading with Pictures was my attempt to address those in a systemic way. I mean, this is basically my life's work as far as I'm concerned from here on out. I intend to be working on this for the next 20 to 40 years because it's a giant national and even global issue that we need to make those tools, we need to make those resources available, we need to promote that research. And this is huge stuff. So I think what I really bring to the table, what makes Reading with Pictures different than other groups that have tried to do this in the past is mostly I went out there, I saw the problem firsthand. You know, I went into the trenches and saw what was needed, and then said, it's one thing to do stuff on a local level, it's one thing to do to provide some resources on a small scale. I want to go big or go home, and I want to change the whole structure. And I'm going to take the long view and, you know, to make big partnerships with places like Northwestern University, with some of our other bigger publishing partners that we'll hopefully be able to announce soon. So we're tackling this on the big level, to change everything and allow people who want to do smaller scale work to give them the kind of, to change the system entirely so they can actually start making real change themselves on the smaller level, to open the doors for them. Because right now, everything that we try to do, everything that people have tried to do in the past, they've run up against these giant, seemingly intractable problems. You know, there are hills that they can climb, but to get to that hill, there's this mountain in the way, and our goal is to knock that mountain down.
All right. What is the overall message you'd like to get across to everyone about this organization?
So I guess the overall message of the organization is fundamentally Hooked on Comics worked for me, it worked for people, it worked for you probably. If you're someone who, you know, grew up with this stuff, you know people it worked for, you know it works. Yeah. We want to share that with everybody. And so that's the mission. How we're doing that and how we hope people can become involved in it is we want to bring this material to schools. We want to develop, if you're a teacher that's already used comics in the classroom, we want you to tell us about it and tell us about your experience. Write up your experience. Write up the lesson plans that you made so that we can share them with other teachers. There's a lot of you out there. You just don't know each other. You just don't know each other exists. We want to put you all in one big group together so you can share all the work that you've done, and everyone can lift everyone else up. That's the real game-changing thing we were trying to do, is harness all these other individual efforts that have already been happening in isolation of each other and make them start working together. Everyone pulling on one rope instead of 1,000 individual ropes. And when we get all those people pulling together, we can, like I said, we're going to try to move mountains, try to knock mountains down. We can do that when we put everyone together.
Well, it sounds wonderful. You also advocate that they have the potential to revolutionize the landscape as a whole, comics, through reasons such as increased memory retention, the ability to decipher inferred meaning through examples of body language.
Right.
But there are adjustments that will need to be made in order to make comics work in academia in terms of aesthetics, in terms of plot structure. What kind of changes do you think would need to be made in terms of those subjects?
So, I mean, again, it really depends on the subject being taught and at what group, what age level, and what's the end goal. Like, what are we? So, you know, what are we teaching for? What are we testing for? What's our end goal? And in that case, I think the biggest changes and the biggest concessions that are going to have to be made are, in nonfiction terms, everything that's really been made so far has been made for kind of, in terms of like nonfiction, for instance, it's been written in a pop sense. So something like, which I think is amazing, like Larry Gonick's Cartoon Guide to the Cartoon History of the Universe, which I think is probably, it's my favorite history book that I've ever come across. It's still very much a pop book, and it's organized to be read by people who are already interested in the topic. And it's organized in such a way that it's designed to be read really front to back as a sequence, and there's a lot of it. So in that case, it would be more like we would want to chop pieces of that up, repurpose it, build stuff around it, build teaching tools around it. So mostly, I think longer works are going to get shorter, turned into anecdotes or textbook chapters, and rather than books in of themselves. And I think we're also going to have to start taking a look at directing what we make. You know, why are we making this? Is it just for the artistic expression of it, or are we making it for a purpose, to be testable, to get stuff out of there into some kid's brain? And so it's moving essentially from a pleasure reading model to a guided reading education model. And in some cases it's a big change, in some cases it's not. But I don't think comics themselves, the only thing I foresee changing significantly on the aesthetic level is simplification of panel structure, honestly. Moving back to the grid, making sure it's very easy to see what I should read in what order, where my eyes should be going at any given time. So honestly, going back towards something like a comic strip scenario where, you know, the grid layouts are very simple. Word balloons are clearly defined. You read this one first, this one second. If there's another one, it's very clear this is the number 3, that sort of thing. That's the biggest aesthetic change. Making sure that rather than an artistic statement, clarity of thought is going to be the most important thing.
All right. Well, lastly, do you recommend any works that have been an inspiration for you in comics, anime, manga?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I could go on for a long time here. In terms of education, since that we were just talking about, everything Larry Gonick has ever done, I think he's the real godfather of all this. In terms of myself as a creator and as an appreciator of the comics medium, the works of Scott McCloud, understanding comics, and for that matter, a lot of the formalistic experimentation he did back in the day on Zot, works like that. In the manga realm, Lone Wolf and Cub is just an amazing work, an amazing bit of plotting, an amazing realization of a bygone time period. Just the level of research and thought that goes into that series is mind-numbing to me. I'd also recommend Nausicaa. The manga more so than the anime. The anime is really truncated. But the manga's magnificent. Everything Miyazaki's done, also in the film realm, has been a huge influence on me. Pixar, everything they've done. I mean, I think they really nail a story that appeals to everyone, and a visual style and a visual sense that grounds you in a false world, but makes it feel so perfectly real. And then, as a superhero writer, I mean, I think that there's 2 schools that really influence me. One is the Alan Moores of the world, the Neil Gaimans, the Frank Millers, who do very intense adult takes on these tropes and do it very well. But the other is the school that says, you know what, we're writing a fun superhero story, let's have fun with it. And those are people like Fred Van Lente, Jeff Parker. I think those are the guys that grab these concepts, have a bit of a self-aware irony to them, but take them seriously enough that there's drama, but also realize that we're inherently on a roller coaster ride, and they make us laugh, they make us kind of like, they shock us with thrills. And I think that is what most day-to-day comic experiences should be. And when I wrote my Batman, for instance, my goal was to say, I'm going to give you a fun time. I want to make you laugh. I want to make you smile a lot. And I want you to put down the book feeling good. And I think those guys do that better than anybody.
Well, all of your work here sounds like a wonderful method of enhancing education, and you've got my full support already. It's been wonderful talking to you. Josh Elder, everybody.